I already told you I love history, so I'm going to tell you one more true story from history. This happens to be Scottish history, and it goes back to the year 1333. Perhaps you've heard it before. It's the true story of Sir James Douglas. He was probably the best known, if you study Scottish history, of any of the leaders or generals or in early Scottish history. He was even better known than William Wallace, who's the Scottish military guy that Braveheart was written around. And Sir James Douglas served as the captain of the Scottish Army under the reign of, if you study King Robert the Bruce, who himself was another amazing commander before he became king. And at the end of King Robert the Bruce's life, he made a very large request of Douglas. The king himself had wanted to live long enough that he himself could be part of the fight for Christianity, so that the Scottish people could without being hindered or persecuted, live as full-faced Christians. And he wanted to be a part of the fight for Christianity and the cross. But he, at the point that we're hearing in history, had become critically ill. He was over 50 years of age, and obviously back in the 1300s, lifespans were much shorter. He'd become critically ill, and so he knew at that point that he was not going to be physically able himself to go to battle for Christianity and the cross against the enemies, as he had so dreamed of one day himself doing, even as the king. So history says that he called Douglas into him, and he said to him, and I quote exactly what the history books say he said, "My life is almost gone, and there remains but one thing left for me to accomplish, and that is to meet death without fear, as every man must eventually do. I'd hoped myself to fight against the heathens warring against the cross of Christ, but now my weak body will not make that journey." And he said to Douglas, "Therefore will you, my son, make a solemn promise and pledge to me in my last hours. When I die, will you carry my heart into the battle? The heart inside of me will not rest until it does battles against the enemies of the cross." So history tells us, Scottish history, that James Douglas, kneeling by his king at that obviously pretty emotional moment, when he could speak through his own brokenness, pledged solemnly, and I quote again, "It will be the highest honor of my life, Your Majesty. I will carry your noble heart into battle against the enemies of the cross. My life will have no higher calling. I will carry the heart of my king." Scottish history says that Robert the Bruce, died June 7th, 1329, not quite 55 years of age. And as the story goes, as Sir Douglas was told that the man he so loved and respected had left this body and gone to be with the Lord, he walked into the chambers where the body, just moments before, had taken last breath, and remembering the promise that he had made to his king to carry his heart into battle, he took out a knife and he cut open the chest of the deceased king. And with blood gushing, he reached into the chest until he found what he knew to be the heart. And he pulled it out and then solemnly walked. And there was in that bedroom chamber a large fireplace, because obviously 1300s, that was the heating system. And he walked to there and then put the heart into the fireplace to be cremated, as it were. He knew that this day was going to come, so he had prepared to head. He had a large metal manly locket, as it were, that he took the cremated ashes from the king's heart and put it inside the locket. And then he had a heavy chain that he put it around. And so he wore the locket with the king's heart around his neck, because he didn't know when the moment would be that he would next face the enemies of the cross in battle. But he had promised his king that his heart, king's heart, the ashes now, would go with him into battle. So it was a period of a couple of more years. And then Scottish history tells us that he was just making the rounds with some of his men. It was just a small group of men, not a large platoon, when they came upon seeing that a small group of Scottish men were being plummeted by some of the enemies of the cross. And he quickly called to his small band of soldiers. They realized that if they went back to town and got more soldiers, that would even the odds. All the guys that were their Scottish brethren would be killed before they ever made it back. So they were quickly trying to make a game plan on what their attack was going to be when they saw the enemy coming up the hill towards them. The enemies of the cross, they knew who they were. And so Scottish history says that then Sir Douglas ripped the locket with the ashes of his king from around his neck. And with his strong arm, he threw the locket as deeply as he could into the direction where the enemy was coming from. And he shouted, "Men, will you join me this hour as together we fight for the heart of our king?" They were desperately outnumbered, and so the battle became fierce with the small group of people who were being plummeted before and the small group that were with Sir Douglas. But the battle became known as a key turning point in the war. And it went on because of their bravery for so long that eventually some other Scottish people did come to join from the town. And again, it went down as a turning point. At the end of the battle, they had won, but Sir Douglas and most of the men with him, along with many others, had given their life for that cause. True Scottish history, not just a knife story, tells that when they found Sir Douglas, his body already with rigor mortis setting in one hand, his hand had frozen to the sword, but in the second hand, by one of those miraculous God incidences. How it happened, we don't know. Somehow, in the midst of battle, his eye must have caught the glint of the old locket that he had thrown ahead with the embalmed ashes of the heart of his king, and clenched tightly in the other hand with rigor mortis was that locket. Church, what is it? It's a lot of stuff. It's being third-class ticket holders, not just coming and occupying, but saying, I want to make a difference. It's asking friends and neighbors again next week, but then moving forward, it's looking for people you don't know and authentically reaching out in friendship. It's being a whip person. But all in all, it's fighting for the heart of our King.